Okay, all right. Okay. Look, I'm super excited, everybody. This is podcast number 2 in the Explore Albert series, Into the Unknown. And this week, we're going deep into the story of the Picts. Back to northern Scotland, where the painted warriors of the north fought off the Romans and won. But almost nothing is known about them, other than the scribbles that they left on the stones that still pockmark this landscape. Except for the fact that just recently, someone I know might have decoded their ancient language. Let's talk to her. Let's figure out what they actually were trying to say to us thousands of years ago. Up now is Kelly Kilpatrick, linguist, explorer, and Celticist. Let's go.
One small step for
About that
man,
moment of near disaster,
and with difficulty kept my course.
Understanding of chimpanzees in the wild.
It was for us the pleasure of discovering.
Kelly Kilpatrick.
Hello,
So you've
Albert.
got, so you've got, you said you've got a little one bouncing around in the background right now and another one at Scouts.
Yeah, I've got two. One at Scouts, he's really into all things Pictish, but also samurai. And the little one can say bird. So yeah,
I
they're
can't believe it.
pretty young.
So were you like if your littlest one is now what you say 7 months
About
old,
8.5 months. Yeah.
8.5 months. That you were maybe at the very beginning of pregnancy when we were crossing that river and we're flying around in a helicopter. Then I guess.
No, don't worry. I'm probably, I would have definitely said no, but no, I was not. It was the end of the following month. I was at an archaeological excavation, and after the
Oh,
dig
that's
was.
where the magic happened. Is that what
Well,
you're trying to
no,
tell
it's
us?
not where the magic happened. But after the dig was over, I was looking at some of the photos, and I was like, I'm a little bit big around the middle. Maybe I should go on a diet. And that's when I was like, oh, uh-oh, surprise, baby. So that was kind of
Oh,
a
that's
bit of a
awesome.
surprise. But no, it's been really awesome. So after we'd finished filming, I went on a few digs and then found out I was pregnant. And she's already been on her first excavation with me. So yeah, archaeo baby. Quite happy to
Wow,
come along.
that's
So yeah, she's
awesome.
been really, really cool. Yeah.
Do you think she's gonna be a Celticist like you, or
I,
who
sh- you
knows what
know,
topic do you think she's gonna get into?
I don't know. My son, he really loves all things Celtic. In the summertime, he wants to, like run around the garden in shorts. He wants me to paint Pictish symbols all over him. So
Mm.
chip off the
Well,
old.
I mean,
Yeah.
I get it, right? There's something kind of, I mean, the allure of the Celtic history is, yeah, I mean, everybody can kind of relate to it, right? There's like almost like a magic associated with it that I think as a kid or an adult or whatever, it inspires. I don't know. I mean, it
Yeah.
inspires something within us, right? What is
I
that? What got you into Celticism?
um I was pretty young. I was a child actually when I first started getting into it. I was really into sort of Celtic music and culture when I was about as young as 8. And that's because I played quite a lot of musical instruments. I came from a rather musical family, and I really, really liked Celtic music. And as I began to get a bit older, um, I got really into archaeology. So I was one of those kids who would, read a National Geographic magazine and then take my favorite pictures out of it to put it on the walls of my room. And by the time I was about 15, 16, I was, collecting books on the Celts. And I just really, I don't know, it's just really drawn to it. I think it's kind of the mystery around a lot of their objects and their artwork. Like lots of spirals and things like that. And as well as like fantastic languages, a lot of which are lost. So yeah, things like that.
Yeah. Oh
And
well. I mean,
that's what really
we're
drew
about
me
to
to.
get into all that. I definitely want to get into all that, but I just you said that there were. I mean, just to pull things back a little bit. Um, we've known each other what, like about a year or more now. We got to film
Yeah.
together in the Highlands of Scotland, and run around in rivers and crossing rivers and trying to try, trying to make our way through forests that were s- so dense that they made you fear the beasts coming down from all sides, as you described. Or we were running around I think we flew around in a helicopter for a while. It was
Yeah.
incredible, right? But you mentioned that for you, because what I do on a lot of these shows is I get to connect with experts like you who have dedicated their lives to a specific research topic. And in our case, for this story, it was the Picts. But for you, you said that it started maybe at the age of 8, and with imagery that you were seeing in books. Because that to me is, I mean, that's kind of the theme of some of what we're trying to touch on here in this podcast, is that sometimes one image can change the course of somebody's life. Was there something like that for you? Was there like a specific image that got you all of a sudden to turn on your Celtic lights?
Yeah, I think starting out it was things like the Book of Kells. Really, these Celtic manuscripts that are really highly decorative. Things like that really drew me in. You could just, you just spend ages staring at these things, and and you never, it's almost like you're trying to mentally unravel it, and you end up thinking about it for a long time. And it was really with, oh yeah, there's one of the images of me as a child. I think I was probably about 15. Yeah, a bit embarrassing. I was like, okay, I'll share that. Yeah, that was me when I was about 15 getting a book on the Celts.
Oh my god, is that the Christmas tree there? Is this what you
Yeah,
got
that's
for
Chris.
Christmas, was
Yeah,
a
it was
book on the
Christmas
Celts?
present. Yeah, my parents could it was really quite easy to shop more. They'd give me books on the Celts and Celtic music CDs and things like that. And I just love stuff like that. So my mom sent me that not too long ago. She's like, "Oh, here, have this photo," and I was like, "Oh, I've got
Oh,
this photo."
oh, that's great, and look at those pajamas. I mean, you guys
I
were working.
know.
That's a full Christmas experience there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
that was
great.
me. And I even, yeah, at a young age, I think what I was really drawn to a lot of the mysteries around Celtic, particularly like ancient and medieval Celtic archaeology and art. That really pulled me in, wanting to solve these mysteries. And that's one of the things that I have just loved throughout my whole career, and it's just been my passion.
Ooh, let's get into some
Wow.
mysteries. No, this is perfect for us. But okay, so maybe you can lead us off with, and while we're doing that, maybe you can bears in the background researching some stuff on the fly. So if there's something you want him to look up, just shout it out, and he can pull it up. You mentioned something like the Book of the Elves. What was
Oh,
that?
the Book of
Was it?
Kells?
It was
The Book of Kells,
Relves?
Kells. Kells,
K
Kells.
E W K E.
E
Let's see if we can
L.
grab that. But what is that?
It's
Kells.
it's a religious book, and it's called Kells because it's associated with a monastery of Kells in Ireland. Um, yeah, there you go. These are some of what you call like carpet pages from the Book of Kells, and it's just, I mean, you can just look at how exquisite this artwork is. It's really detailed. It's highly decorative, but also symbolic. And the this type of imagery had a lot of meaning to the people who made it, and that's been one of the aspects that I focus on is kind of interpreting what do these things mean. But
Okay, so
sometimes,
what do they
yeah.
mean?
Oh well, that one.
I mean, this goes
So
back.
yeah.
Doesn't it go back a bit further into the realm of paganism and that sort of thing?
Yeah, Celtic history goes back a lot further than like this example here. This is a medieval example. And in the ancient period, so we're going back to say at least into the Iron Age, but into the Bronze Age. Um, so maybe about like 1500 BC, a bit earlier. Celtic peoples once stretched, Celtic cultures, I should say, people who spoke Celtic languages lived all the way from Ireland to as far east as Turkey. And so you have, and these were not like a unified people, like it wasn't a Celtic nation, So it wasn't like, like the Roman Empire was one sort of cohesive political unit, but the Celts weren't. There were lots of different peoples and tribes. But the one thing that they had in common was they had related languages. So that's how ancient peoples are identified as Celtic. And so yeah, some examples, if he wants to look up some examples of ancient Celtic art, one that comes to mind is the Gundestrup cauldron. Do you want me to spell that? That's a
Oh, let's pull that one.
yeah, that's a big word.
Oh
So
yeah, how do you spell that?
Gu
Gundestrup.
Gundestrup, Gu. I have to think about it now. Gundestrup. That's it. Yeah, Gundestrup cauldron.
Gundestrup. What does Gundestrup mean?
It was, so I think that's where it was found. It was found in a peat bog in Denmark. And this is it's a fabulous example of example Celtic art. So this is going back to the pagan period. And
Oh, look at that. Wait, here, can you zone in on the image right above with the person standing between two animals? So I've seen this imagery, if it's what I think it is, I've seen this same imagery uh in Mesopotamia, this idea of a person between two beasts. Is that what
yeah,
I'm seeing there, or is that
yeah,
something else?
you get that a lot in ancient Eastern art, as well as in ancient Celtic art, and it does survive into the Middle Ages. Yeah, if he can click on that picture, you'll see as well that the figure has horns. He has like deer antlers on
Can
his
you
head.
tap into that bear, the World History Encyclopedia image that has looks like a person meditating almost? Gundestrup.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my gosh. Is that really what's okay, so this is Celtic, going back to
Well,
the
yeah, this is
Bronze
Celtic.
Age?
No, this isn't Bronze Age. This is Iron Age. I think I don't know the date of this one off the top of my head. I'm gonna say first century BC, first century AD, sort of about that period. Probably a bit earlier. But yeah, what's really interesting about this one is so it's a cauldron. It's a really big artifact, but it's made out of all these panels, and on each of these panels there's a picture of a god or a goddess. And now we don't know the names of all of these figures. We can kind of work out what some of them might be from sort of comparing them uh, with known Celtic gods elsewhere and statues and things like that. But it's got all of these figures, and a lot of them are, it's almost like it's probably a ritual object. In the center of it, I don't know, you can't see the center, but yeah, so here's a good example. And this is thought to be the Celtic god Cernunnos. He's a horned god, presumably a god of something like fertility and animals. So you can see in one hand, he's holding a snake, and in the other, he's holding a torque, which is one of these large neck rings that the ancient Celts were known for wearing. Do you see that ring that he's holding in his hand? And he's got one of them as well around his neck. So if you look at the figure's neck, yeah, you can see one of those torques on his neck.
What were the torques for? I mean, obviously this is something very powerful, otherwise it wouldn't be, etched into this cauldron as a main figure piece of what he's holding in his right hand. What is that?
But one of the
Just a
things that's quite
necklace? Is it
clear, like it's yeah, but they're always made out. They're usually made out of like precious metals, like gold or silver, and they're quite big things, some of them, and so presumably whoever was wearing them was very important, very powerful, probably quite wealthy as well. And in this case, it suggests that it may have some sort of religious symbolism as well.
Wow. Okay, so you are an 8-year-old child and you're growing up, I can see from maybe from your the color of your hair that maybe do you have Celtic ancestry? I don't know, am I assuming too much? But
Yeah, no, yeah, Kilpatrick's, yeah, it's certainly a Celtic name. My dad's side of the family is Scottish, and my mom's side of the family is German. So yeah, there
you
is
you see an
some.
image like the one on the cauldron there. Bear, do you mind just pulling that cauldron back up just one more time? and when you look into the eyes of this Celtic god, like what are you feeling? Are you feeling are you understanding a part of your ancient self? Like what drew you in here, or does it feel like something beyond the humanity that you know? Because to me, when I see this, it seems I mean, it seems mystical and mysterious, and it's like, well, what did the person who created that really think and position themselves in the world like?
Yeah, what really draws me to objects like this and ancient Celtic culture in general is because if you think about sort of like ancient history, we have, the ancient Romans, they're really well known. The Greeks, they're really well known. But the third largest sort of culture in ancient Europe was the Celts. And we don't know that much about the ancient Celts because they haven't left us hardly any writings. You don't get any writing until you get to the Middle Ages, but they have left us loads of artifacts like these. And I've kind of made it my lifelong passion to resolve a lot of the mysteries about these types of objects, such as where are they from? What does the imagery on them mean? What did it mean to those people? And so it's kind of what can sort of like art history tell us about these things? What can archaeology tell us about them? And what can we do with new technology to find out more about the people who made these artifacts and what it meant and what they meant to them? So that's that's
For
been kind of
sure. I
like my
mean,
driving home.
that's your that's the summary of your bio.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Your passion for this, to try to figure this out. But as a let's say, let's say your son comes home from scouts today and says, "Mom, what's the coolest discovery of any of these mysteries that you've ever made? What's the biggest revelation that you've made into the Celts?" What would you say to little 7-year-old
Oh, what
Kilpatrick
would I say to him? So I
Jr.?
would probably say, I think thus far, probably one of the biggest contributions I have made is in my work on the Picts. So we were talking a lot about the Picts when we were doing Lost Cities, and what I really really love about the Picts is they haven't left us a lot of writing. In fact, they've left us practically none. So we don't know a lot about their language. And so we have to study them through things like archaeology and the artwork that they left us. Because for a Celtic culture, they had really, really rich imagery in things like symbol stones. And I always found it, like growing up, I found it really fascinating that there was this culture living on what's kind of the edge of Europe. And the Picts survived into the early Middle Ages. I find it fascinating that this culture lasted for that long, but they haven't left us any writings. But instead, what they've left us with are hundreds of things called symbol stones, which is a mysterious form of, I won't call it writing, that's a loaded term, but it's a form of communication that they have left on monuments, such as this one here in the photo. And we don't know what these mean. This has been a mystery, for many, many years. And so yes, I really, really love these types of monuments. And so if my son were to come home and ask me, "Mom, what's your biggest contribution?" I would probably say it is on trying to untangle and transcribe and translate a very rare Pictish stone that actually has an inscription. It has two inscriptions on it, and one was in a script, which, a style of writing that until recently was not decoded. And so that was my lockdown project actually during the pandemic, was decoding Pictish. Yeah, that's what I did during the that's one of the many things I did during the pandemic, other than, of course, being a mom and
Oh my
trying
God.
to
So
work. That was that was what
are
I
you
did.
saying that during the pandemic you decoded a lost ancient language,
Yeah,
one of the
that's what
most
I
enigmatic
I
languages
Yeah, so yeah, that's what we
Yeah, I
did.
mean, for me, my COVID was very different. I was trying to figure out how to make cocktails out of canned bean juice and things like this. It was not nearly as productive as decoding an ancient language that's been lost to time for thousands of years. But I mean,
Yeah,
we need people
that's what
like
I
you to
did.
do that kind of thing. So
Yeah, that was
yeah, so
yeah. No,
tell me about
we
that. First of all, but I mean, what was that like? But also, can you position this language in a framework of where it was, when it was, in the context of like the rest of the world and that? So just get wrap my head around when this
yeah
would have been
okay.
spoken.
Yeah, so the Picts, they left us no writings essentially. We have, well, there's one or two things, well, sorry, there's one document that survived that's a bit later, it's medieval, and it just records a list of kings' names. And then everything else we know about the Picts, other than archaeology, comes from written sources about them from their neighbors. And then there's other sources such as place names that have survived in Scotland. Oh, so I should probably tell everybody, by the way, the Picts live in, they lived in what's now modern day Scotland, sort of eastern and northern Scotland. And so there's names of places. And the evidence that survives suggests that they were speakers of a Celtic language and that they probably spoke a language kind of similar to Welsh, modern Welsh today. So it's what you would call a Brittonic language. But there's almost, so in addition to Pictish symbols, there's another type of script that they did use occasionally when they were carving monuments, and it's called Ogham. And that's a type of script that actually was developed in Ireland, sort of at the tail end of the Roman period. That's when Ogham was developed in Ireland. And the Picts did use it on occasion, but the Ogham inscriptions of Picklin are, I almost want to say it, they're really, really challenging to interpret. And there's quite a lot of reasons for that. I mean, one might be that they're using it in a way that's not quite standard, not quite the way people are using it in Ireland, or also, Owen was used in Wales as well. And so there's one scholar, Catherine Forsyth, who's devoted her entire life to, her life's work is working on the Ogham inscriptions of Scotland. And they are really, really challenging to interpret. And one of the things, so I had started doing some research on this particular stone in Aberdeenshire, not far away from where we were filming. It was really close to where we were filming near Riney and Taponoth. So I had started doing some work on this stone, and I'd been able to, visit it. And then my husband found out he got a job at the University of Galway. So then we moved to Ireland. And then just about the time we moved to Ireland, the pandemic hit. And then we found out we were in lockdown. And at the time, my son was about 2. So we were really, really fortunate, actually, because we were in a house that was in quite a remote location, but we had 5 beaches to ourselves. There we lived like right on the coast. So yeah, it was great. It was, I think in terms
What
of
can you do with more than one beach? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not trying to say that you're being a little bit,
yeah,
beach rich here, but I mean, 5 beaches on the coast of Ireland
yeah,
uh, through
yeah.
lockdown sounds pretty magical.
It was a really,
Inspiring scene to decode a language.
yeah, it
Okay,
was
so you're
an
sitting on this beach town.
writing, this inscription in the sand. So yeah, it was, yeah, I did that actually a lot. So yeah, it was just like the whole experience was just quite surreal because, we don't have any family in Ireland or anything. So we had just moved countries. We had a young child. We all of a sudden had to start working from home. Lockdown happened. And going on in the background, I had been working on this inscription, and I had found a journal that was willing to publish it. And so, a little bit, maybe every day or every other day, my husband and I would take turns taking our son to the beach, and then I'd do a little bit of work, and then, And then gradually, towards the end of lockdown, I had managed to actually crack quite a bit of it, decode quite a lot of the inscription. And one of the things that helped me to decode this had to do with a lot of the work that I'd been doing, like teaching work. So with some of my university lecturing, I teach curse tablet. I teach about curse tablets, ancient curse tablets, Celtic ones, and a lot of the hand.
Like to curse you, like
Yeah,
what do you mean by curse
what
tablet? I
what
have
they
no
would
idea what
do
that
is
means.
they would, say if someone stole your microphone and you were really mad and you wanted to curse them, you'd write that down on I don't know, any object, something you like. If someone stole something and you wanted to put a curse on them, you would write it down on a lead tablet and put it in some place sacred. And this was really, really common in the ancient world. Like the Romans did this, the Greeks did this, and then the Celts also adopted that custom. And one of the things that struck me when I was working on the Newton stone was that the style of the letters on this Pictish stone are very similar to some of the letters in these curse tablets. And I thought, this is, it's kind of, you can see the light bulb going off. I thought, right. So what I did to start decoding this, there we go. This is the stone itself, the Newton stone. And so what I did to start decoding these letters was to break it down one at a time and to compare each one to letters in different types of scripts, ranging from about the 1st century AD to the 7th, to try and narrow down what could the letters be. And
okay, so this stone is a curse stone. Is that what I'm understanding? Is
no,
this
sorry,
like you
no,
called
no.
it the
So
Newton stone?
So it's called the Newton stone. So it's does Bear have one of the other? There's a drawing of it. That's a different one. I've got a picture of a drawing by John Borland.
So all over the old world of Britain, there's these stones speckled about the landscape, and also into Scotland and other places like this, some of which hold the grudges of ancient times, all the curses
No,
and
no.
anger, and
Sorry, yeah,
I'm
I
trying to understand the curse
explained
stuff
that
because
badly.
I no, you didn't. I'm just blown away by this. I like that. No, it's just it's a very poetic experience to think about the fact that you decoded an ancient language through a collection of interpretations or translations of people's grudges from thousands of years
I
ago.
know.
Is that is
Yeah,
that
I think
is that true? Is that
no.
accurate? I don't know.
Yeah, what do I've got this thing.
Or
So
did I make that up?
so this the Newton stone. It's a bit taller than me. So I'm about 5'8". So yeah, it's quite tall. I think it's about 6 foot tall. So it's quite tall, and it's very similar to that other picture of a Pictish symbol stone that we saw. And there is nothing else in Britain like the Newton stone. It is completely unique. And for that reason, a couple decades ago, someone suggested that the inscription on it was a forgery. And so I think a lot of people were afraid to work with it. But yeah, I was a bit brave. I was like, okay, no, I'll have a go. We'll try and, decode the Newton stone. So this is a drawing of it. And this is made by my friend and colleague, John Borland. And it's got 2 inscriptions on it. So it's got 2, well, actually, sorry, it's got 3. So you can see the one with all the little lines. You see lots of little lines going down the left side. That is an Ogham inscription. Yeah. So that's the type of Irish writing I mentioned earlier. And then it's got this other inscription on the front bit, which looks like little letters. And you can see the little swastika-like thing on it. So that's the second inscription. And then it's got another one, which is usually covered up in moss if you actually see the stone in person. But the stone, all the moss had been taken off for this drawing. And if you can zoom out just a little bit, you can see that, the little thing there, that's a mirror, and that's a Pictish symbol. And that's carved just on the bottom side of the stone. And then it's got on the back of it a little spiral, which is probably a prehistoric carving. When I say prehistoric, probably Neolithic. So it's a very early one. And so what happened was the stone probably was originally part of it was either a standing stone or part of a stone circle. And then a couple thousand years later, the Picts reused it to carve these inscriptions and that mirror symbol.
And you've also got Ogham there too. So
Yeah.
what you're describing is potentially like a Rosetta Stone for
Exactly. Yeah. So
multiple Celtic
it
languages.
it's the Rosetta Stone for Pictish. So yeah, I won't say it's the Rosetta Stone for Pictish, but I think translating it is certainly getting us on the right track. So what I did in between beach visits during lockdown was to just kind of work on these letters individually. So the Ogham inscription is a bit strange in that normally you read Ogham from the bottom up, but on this stone you actually read it from the top down, and then it loops back around up the front. So the Ogham inscription is a bit strange in terms of the layout. And because this was during the pandemic.
How can you? I mean, how just so I can understand, how can you read? How can you turn that into a language? To me, that looks like just a bunch of tick marks on the side of on a piece of string. Is this actually saying something? Like what kind of code is this? What is it? How do you interpret a bunch of just straight lines and hashtags?
Yeah, well, yeah, I like hashtags. But so if you look at them, they're not all quite straight. So Ogham is one of those things. So it uses a line. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It uses a line, and the letters are carved either against the line or over the line, depending on what the letters are. And then each letter has a certain number of strokes. So on that one, the first 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first 5 lines, if you're looking down, the first 5 lines that go across, that's the letter I.
What?
Yeah, that's the
Wait,
letter
so
I.
in the bottom, where the hook,
so not where the hook is.
so I
Where
see
on
like a
the
long line and then a little hook.
Yeah. So at the top of the long line. Yeah. So at the top of the long line. So the first 5 lines going across is the letter I. And you see how the next set, they're kind of on the other side. They're on the right side. So 2 of those little lines are a D. And then the next 2 lines are a D. And so, yeah, that's how Ogham works. It's, and they,
I don't see it. I'm sorry, Kelly. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know how anybody. I get. I mean that I don't understand all languages, obviously, but as a linguist, which in some ways, are you a linguist or an archaeologist? You're probably a combination of both. As a linguist, how do you get to the point where you can see that translates to a Roman alphabet like a I or a D or something like this? How does that work?
I guess practice. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, there are some Ogham inscriptions. I don't know. You could probably, I don't know if Bear wants to look up. There's a web page called Ogham in 3D where they've created 3D models of all the Ogham inscriptions in Ireland, and yeah, this is a fairly standard script. There's hundreds of Ogham inscriptions in Ireland, in Wales. There's a handful in Scotland as well. And so, yeah, once you know what the letters are and once you get your eye into it, you can work out what the inscription says. But I mean, that being said, this Ogham inscription gets really, really tricky, especially as you follow it down towards the bottom where it curves back up. And one of the things, it's almost like the carvers could tell as they were going down closer to the bottom that they were running out of space. So the letters get closer and closer together. Yeah, I was like, okay. And you can tell that you see how the lines that just get closer and closer. So they knew they were running out of space and the letters get closer and closer, but then that makes it harder to decipher what letter is it. What did they mean?
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so the
And then
first
they
part of
turn and
it,
then they turn back. Is that why they U-turn back up to the
I
top?
think,
Because they
yeah,
knew that
they
they're running out of
U-turned back at
space?
the top. Yeah, they needed that space. So at
I've done
least
that
that's what I
before.
think they did. Yeah, one theory is that a second person carved it. I think it's likely that they just realized they ran out of space, and so they continued upwards with that strange little tail and finished carving the inscription. And the first, yeah, you probably just have to take my word for it, but the first word in the Ogham inscription is probably a man's name, Ethernon, or Ethern or Ethernon, um, which is, it's
They're
interesting.
not.
Yeah, Ethernon, Ethernon, and that's a name that is. It's found elsewhere on Pictish Ogham inscriptions. It was also the name of a Pictish saint. Now, whether or not the saint is represented on this, we don't know. It seems like it was it's a Pictish name that's attested elsewhere, so it might have just been a very popular name. But the important thing is it tells us, hey, we have a Pictish name on there. So the inscription, is probably in Pictish. And then,
Okay, so Etherdon
yeah,
had his name written in Ogham, and then your theory is that it would also be potentially on whatever those little scribbles are on the
them.
in the center
Well,
of the stone
yeah,
as
and
a
I think, yeah, a lot of people, people who studied this previously, have suggested, well, maybe it's also in the other inscription, and there's parallels for that because in Wales, in the kind of late Roman, early Middle Ages, they have what's called bilingual stones, where you will have the name of a person written in Ogham, and you'll have it in Latin letters. And there's quite a few of those in Wales. So there's a good reason to believe that it would be. But there's a bit of a problem. It's one that you encounter immediately. And the first is that there's not the same number of characters on the. I'll go ahead and tell you this is a Latin script. So not Latin language, but they're using Latin letters. So there's not the same number of letters in the Ogham and the Latin script. So you think, okay, we've probably got more information in the Latin text. And when you work out, or rather when I worked out what the letters were for the Latin one, you think, we don't have that information in the Ogham. So they're potentially telling us two different things. And so I think, yeah, this is actually going back to the pandemic. One thing that happened, which was really good, and I have to give a huge shout out to lots of friends who helped, because trying to decode, a lost language in the middle of a pandemic when you don't have, access to libraries or anything, a lot of friends really helped with things like books and articles that I needed to get this work done. And another thing that happened was a group of Celticists, primarily Celtic linguists, they started having weekly Zoom meetings. And fortunately, it was after time when, it was after bedtime for my son, so I could attend some of these. And one day they let me have a session where I kind of got to lead a session on the research I'd done so far on this stone. And together with a lot of these linguists, we actually ended up being able to hammer out quite a lot of important things about these inscriptions. So one was we worked out that,
Wow.
yeah,
I'm just trying to put myself in the context here because during COVID, the Zoom calls I had were not at all trying to decode an ancient language. They were just griping about how stuck we were at home. But you and these other linguists were literally solving an ancient mystery locked in enigmatic symbols on stones scattered across the countryside via Zoom. Is that yeah,
yeah,
I feel like this
yeah.
should
This
be
was
some
yeah.
kind of movie or something. Yeah, what happened? What were the breakthroughs?
So one of the breakthroughs was that we worked out that the inscriptions were probably made at the same time. And that's quite important because you think, oh, well, one could have, the Latin one could have been there first and then someone added the Ogham later. And you think, okay, they have nothing to do with each other. But that's not the case. They were probably made at the same time. And I would argue that the mirror symbol was added at the same time as well. And we were also able, one of the linguists pointed out, so I had worked out at this point that the top line of the Latin inscription probably had the letters E, T,
That big
T,
blob
E.
in the
Yeah,
middle. Is that right?
So yeah, the big one in the middle. So E, T, T, E. That's what I had worked out that probably meant. And at this point, my transcription or working out what the letters were was in its early stages. But Simon Rodway, who was one of the peoples on the Zoom call, said, "Wait a minute, that word appears in other Pictish Ogham inscriptions." So we thought, aha, we are on to a winner. And so that was one of the first realizations that this inscription is actually likely to be in Pictish. It's not in Latin, and it's not gibberish, and it's not a forgery. It's in the Pictish language. So,
What does it say?
oh well, now this is where it gets interesting. So, by the time the publication had come out, so I had been able to work out what the letters were, or they're most likely what they were, for the first 3 lines, possibly one in the 4th, and then I'm still working on that final line. So, but the top line, I have no idea how Pictish is actually pronounced, but it probably says something like ete, which might mean something in Pictish like this is or here is, which might be something that you'd get on, say, like a tombstone, like here lies so-and-so. Do you see what I mean? Like, and it presumably means something like this is the stone of. So that's probably what it means. And then the second line, it probably contains a person's name, a man's name, and that's probably
Is it the same name on the Ogham?
No, it's different. So that's the other thing. It's a different name, and so again we have another. It might have so it kind of the second line kind of wraps around the stone, but it has what so in Celtic names like MacDonald, you have that Mac, which means son of, and it probably has the Pictish equivalent of that in the second line. So, and that was actually the M in that letter. That was one of the, again, this was a light bulb above the head moment, the realization that the inscription was using a Latin script, and it's a particular type of M that you see in ancient and sort of, well, I guess sort of like late antique, kind of think into the Roman Empire, and what you see in really informal writing on things like curse tablets. Once I kind of realized what script this was based on, I could figure out what the letters were, and then words started to appear. And what was really cool about when the words started to appear was where words started to appear was that they were clearly Pictish words. They are some that are attested in other sources and in the context. They're Pictish. So that was just like a eureka moment. We were like, it's not a forgery. It is an inscription that is actually written in the Pictish language, and nothing else like that survives anywhere in all of Pictish territories or in all of Scotland. So the beginning of the third line probably has, it's probably a Pictish, again, a Pictish name, and don't quote me on pronunciation, but Geon, Geon. And there is actually a written source called The Life of St. Columba, which was written about the year 700, and it actually records this word. And in the context of the story that's told in this saint's life, it's clear that it says this person from the cohort of Geon, he met the saint, and it's clear from the context that this person was Pictish. So we have 2 words.
So is that Gaon is like maybe like a tribe of the Picts, like a sub-tribe? Is that
but
what you think?
one theory is that it's a tribe. And I wouldn't say tribal name. One theory is that it's probably a regional name, and it's still preserved in the place name Binahi. So where we were standing on top of Tapo North, you can actually see that area, and that would have been the province of Kay. That was the name of the Pictish province. But another theory, and I think this one's probably correct, is that it was a person's name. So not a territorial name, but a person's name. And that personal name is on the Newton inscription. So that was one.
So the blob in the middle is the
Yeah.
only known Pictish writing. Is that what I'm understanding correctly? And that you and your friends during COVID figured that out and got to the point where you could sort of understand what it says. And can you repeat just one time what these ancient words are in your mind? What
Oh,
do they
this is
say?
yeah. This is probably a bit preliminary, but okay. I think because it's you, I'll go ahead and tell you what I think it means. Oh, I'll do this. I know.
Let's do this. Okay.
Okay, fine, Albert. Because it's
I mean,
you.
it's a
Yeah.
theory. It's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it still needs a bit of review, but I think the first three lines say here is, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but Evrer, the son of Gaon, I think is what it says. And I think that's what we have. And then I have a few ideas about what the following letters are, but I won't say that yet. And then in the end of the fourth line, we have another name that's attested elsewhere, and it's another Pictish name. So that's, and I think that's what we have there. But so
That's incredible. I mean,
yeah,
we're learning for the first time what, we're hearing the words, maybe not in the exact sounds of the ancient Picts, but in their meaning, that have been locked on a stone for over, 1500 years. Is that what we're talking about? Or maybe 2000
yeah,
years?
this
Or
one's
what are we?
probably so this one's probably so I had a rough dating based off of the Ogham inscription and the style of the letters themselves. So I suggested it's 6th to very early 7th century, like very early 7th century. So that's essentially about 500 AD to 625. So it's quite early. And that's really important. And I think I did suggest in the publication, if there's any error in the dating, it's earlier rather than later, based off the style of the handwriting. So yeah, so I'm hoping
This
with
is the
reserve.
stone of the son of Gaon and something else. So you said this is I butchered that. I butchered
That's
the
okay.
ancient
Yeah, no,
Celtic
no
Newton
one
stone.
really knows
You
how
said
it's
this is
pronounced. Yeah, because for starters, for years people thought it was a forgery, and it was proved in the 1950s actually by someone who looked at the style of the carving, that the way they had carved the inscription was the same way that sculptors also carved Pictish symbol stones, the earlier type of Pictish symbol stones. And so then once I was able to actually work out a bit about how they made it as well, that was another revelation. Because when I was looking, this is before the pandemic, when I was looking at the stone itself, I realized that some of the letters, they're essentially larger in certain places. And what happens is that they're larger where if you were painting something, you know how sometimes as your brush turns, like the paint kind of pools? And then, so what happened was they must have painted that inscription onto the stone first, and the carver faithfully preserved that because the letters are wider.
oh.
Do you see what I mean? Like they're wider where the paintbrush turned. So that
So you think that
automatically,
it was drawn first. The
yeah,
manufacturing was that it was drawn on the stone and then etched
yeah.
in afterwards. Is that
It
the
was, yeah,
idea?
exactly. It was drawn
Wow.
on and etched in. And they might not have done that for the Ogham, because if they had have done that, they would have realized there wasn't enough space.
I mean, I don't know if you sit back at night and kick your feet up and just sort of soak in the fact that you decoded an ancient language of a people lost in time. or if you take that for granted. But for me, that's pretty incredible. I only know a few other. I know one other person who is a linguist who may have been probably one of the more, I don't know, probably one of the more substantial contributors to the decoding of the Maya glyphs. This guy Dave Stewart, and to me, that guy's like a legend because uh, he in his work as a young kid, he got really obsessed with the Maya, and as a young kid, his parents would take him out into the jungle because they were archaeologists as well. And as an adult, he looks back and says, "Well, look, this is a moment where all of a sudden, for the first time, this language is unlocked, and we can start to get our heads around what was actually in the mindset of the ancient Maya." Now, go to your story, and during COVID, you and a bunch of friends get together, figure out that a stone that's been mislabeled as a forgery is not actually a forgery, but
Yeah.
possibly one of the most important, Rosetta Stone-esque
Yeah.
kind of things for a group of people that have been lost in time, the Picts, which, as you mentioned, was the third largest. What did you say? It was the third
Yeah,
largest
well, they were part
civilization
of
in.
they were part of like a Celtic culture, and the Celtic speaking peoples once lived across all of Europe, and the Picts were one of the they were a Celtic people as well. Do you want to hear the real eureka moment?
Yeah, I want to hear the real.
Yeah.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
tell
no,
me the real
ask
eureka
the question.
moment. That's if
Yeah.
decoding this ancient script isn't the real eureka moment. What is? Let's see.
Well, yeah, yeah, all of it was
What's
kind of the real eureka moment was, I think the article was about to go to press, and I thought, oh, hang on, wait a minute, I know what they're doing here with these inscriptions. So Pictish symbols, Pictish symbol stones, particularly the earlier type, what you usually get is you get 2 to 3 symbols on the stone. You might get, I don't know, you'll get something like the one we saw earlier. You'll get like a double disc and a serpentine Z rod, and then you might get something like a mirror symbol at the very bottom. And they're they have, you might get something like that. You might get 2 or 3 symbols on the stone. Usually if there's a third one, it's a mirror symbol. Now you remember we have that little mirror symbol on the Newton stone. So the real eureka moment was I said, the ogham must represent one symbol. The inscription in the Latin script represents a second symbol, and then the mirror is the third one. So they're using scripts to replace the meaning of the symbol. So now I have to, so now it's like, aha. So they made this stone. Yeah, it was kind of like, that was like, oh, they made this stone following the formula. I'm going to use the word formula. They made this stone following the formula that they were used to, which was Pictish symbols, but they replaced the symbols with script. So that's why they used 2 different ones. So the ogham would have represented one symbol, what was meant by one symbol, and the Latin script represented something different. So that's why they didn't use the same script. They're conveying the meaning of different symbols.
So then are you saying that basically that this stone with these scripts can tell you possibly as a key what all these other enigmatic symbol stones out in the Pictish world might, just something about them, what they might mean, like these other kind of V rods and mysterious circles?
Yeah, I think it's a starting point. Let's put it that way. It's hopefully putting us on a firmer foundation to start understanding these things better. That is, if we can finally translate the rest of the Newton stone. So that's what I have been working on since the pandemic. Still working on the rest of it. So yeah, I think we are just so fortunate
Wow.
that the Newton stone survived because there is nothing else like it. And it might be the key
Wow.
unlocking the mysteries of the rest of the Pictish symbols. Or not the rest of the Pictish symbols,
I
but
gotta say,
how these things functioned on monuments and what their purpose was. So yeah, there was like so many eureka
I
moments
gotta,
in the process of doing this.
Kelly, I gotta say, out of all the "this is what I did during COVID lockdown" stories,
Yeah,
yours is by far the best.
yeah. I was raising a very, very active 2-year-old. We did most of our own gardening, and I was decoding Pictish. That's so me.
That's so me. Yeah, that's really funny.
That's
I
me.
mean, when you look at that picture of you from the age of, I don't know, what you say, 13 or
About
15,
15. Yeah, I think it was about
holding
15.
that, yeah, with your Celtic book, I could see that this is your future. You're gonna decode the ancient
Yeah,
Picts.
decode
What a
Pictish.
what a moment. How does it feel to I don't know, when you reflect back on it, do you do you think to yourself, uh I don't know, do you sort of understand the gravity of what just might have happened during COVID for you, to be able to make that kind of discovery? Not a lot of people get to experience aha moments like that. What did it feel like? What does it feel like now, knowing that, maybe this is the key to understanding these people you've been obsessed with since your childhood?
It was, I don't know, it almost left me craving more. I just wanted to understand more. I just wanted to um it opened the door essentially. It showed that it is actually possible to understand these peoples. It's possible to understand a bit more about their language, their culture, and it's possible to actually understand more about their beliefs. So yeah, it just really opened the door. And a lot of other things started to make sense after that, with how the Picts present things on monuments and how they carve them. And someone actually, a friend of mine described it. She said, "Kelly, you have opened the Pandora's box of Pictish studies." And yeah, it was a really happy moment. I thought, this has been my life passion, and it felt really, it was great. And it kind of encouraged me to just continue, with these things.
Yeah.
And I've done other work like decoding. So the Picts don't just have symbols, they have lots of really figurative art. And at that point, I then started working on looking at some of the other carvings of mythical creatures in Pictish art. And again, it was another eureka moment, was that these are actually figures from Pictish belief. And we have no written evidence about that at all. And again, I went through kind of a similar method of looking at these things systematically and classifying them. And I was able to actually come up with saying, okay, actually, we have a lot of evidence about how the Picts, there's a lot of evidence on some of these later stones about the Picts' pre-Christian beliefs, as well as how they took this pre-Christian belief system with them into the Christian period, and how they continued to use it on things like cross slabs, such as this one.
This is very interesting to me. Like, what was the belief system of an ancient people, or just I'm just trying to understand the belief system of somebody alive today is difficult enough. But to try to get into the belief system of people that have been gone for, I don't know what, almost
Yeah.
1400 years or more. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? Does it expand? First of all, what were some of those belief systems? Like, what's the most exciting one that you sort of tapped into? And then, like, how does that relate to what exists in modern day Scotland? Has this belief system made its way into the fabric
Actually,
of
yeah. Some
the
of some
culture
of
of
it has
Scotland?
made its way. Yeah, I think some of it has actually made its way into Gaelic folklore. Um, so the first real, actually, I had started doing this many years before the pandemic. And I was working on a stone called the Papal Stone, and it's got you can identify a lot of the things on it. It's got a cross. It's got people who are clearly monks. So it was made in a Christian context. But then at the bottom of it, it's got this really weird image of two figures, and they're human figures, and they have bird heads. And in between the bird's heads, they're holding a human head and the figures are carrying axes. Like, it's just quite bizarre. Yeah. So this is the pre-Christian storytelling of the Picts, and you can hardly they're quite hard to see on that image, but the little bird-headed figures, they're down at the bottom. And
So there's some monks at the top,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then
Some
this
we have a
zoom down at the
cross, we have some
bottom.
monks, we have this lion-type creature, and then we have these weird, these weird bird-headed figures, and a lot of the previous literature on these kind of tried to reconcile it with Christian belief and Christian literature, and it just to me it just kind of felt like it was forcing it into a mold that it didn't fit in. And so one of my first conclusions was that it probably these images, they're coming from Pictish native Pictish myth. And then in 2019, the Conan stone was discovered. That was the image we just saw, the Conan stone. And this one, it was a really big cross slab, a absolutely wonderful discovery. And around the cross, it's got these, you see at the top, these sort of like two beasts, and they've got really, really jagged teeth, but they've got chains holding their mouths. You see, it's just really, really interesting. And the chain forms like a Celtic interlace. And then on the back
That's
of
on the left. The image on the left, is that right? There's a big cross
so
on the left, and those
yeah,
braided things down the side. Is that what you're talking about with the
like
chains?
chains holding the mouths of these beasts, and it's around the cross. And then the back of the stone, that's the other picture, and that's a drawing of it by John Borland. It had been reused as a gravestone, so that explains that, January 2nd, 1796. But beneath there is a Pictish symbol, and beneath it there's the scene where you've got this human-like figure, but it's got a really strange head, and it's holding a shield and a sword, and it's fighting like a centaur type creature that has axes in its hand, and there's all these weird animals beneath them. And it was when this stone was discovered, it was again another eureka moment. We have this imagery elsewhere on Pictish cross slabs, and so when I say cross slabs, this is a little bit later. This is going into the Christian period. And what I did was I thought, oh, a lot of the imagery on these later monuments that we thought was just for decoration isn't actually for decoration. It was highly symbolic, and these were little figures that were from Christian mythology, and essentially pre-Christian Pictish religion. And
is that a Z that I see, like the crescent, the sort of Z
yeah,
rod
it's a
thing
Z
going
rod.
on at the
Yeah,
top?
yeah, one of those, sorry, Z rods. Yeah, one of those Z rods. So that's a double disc and Z rod or Z rod. And above it, you can just kind of see a little curl. That's probably another part of a Pictish symbol above. And sadly, those those were damaged when they carved when it was reused as a tombstone in the more modern period.
Oh man, whoever that was, they had no respect for the Picts in
Sadly,
1796. Yeah.
yeah. Are they, this you do find that a lot. These have been reused as tombstones. Actually, and that's probably a really important point. Because a lot of the Pictish, like the mythological imagery that you find, it if you compare it with like the mythologies of other Celtic cultures and other European cultures as well, it has to do with things like the end of the earth and doomsday and the resurrection after death. So life after death. So so it really just tells us a lot about how the Picts viewed the afterlife and how they kind of, once they had started accepting Christianity, how they kind of integrated their previous beliefs into a new Christian culture. And they were kind of using these things hand in hand, and they were using this imagery to essentially say, this, they were using it to complement the Christian imageries, and this is, the end of the world, life after death. That sort of thing. So it all has to
So
do
in their life, I mean, what are you getting out of the life after death story here? I've heard that the idea of cycles and time and things like this were very unique to the Celts. I was reading some stuff that Barrett found yesterday, but like the braids and the chains and the never-ending patterns. What does that overarching theme mean in Celtic belief?
Um, I don't. Well, the interlace and things. It's just kind of like it's a pattern that doesn't end. That may be, something significant. The interlace on this one that's been used for the chains may have something to do with the story of these particular beasts. You do find like these sort of beasts facing one another frequently in Pictish sculpture, and they're usually around a cross. I kind of wonder. I mean, one thing I suspect is are these things like these are beasts that they hold the world together, or something like that, because you do see them quite frequently. And there's actually more little beast on that cross as well. If you look down in the bottom left, on the left side of the cross, they've just been kind of hidden in the interlace. So they're in there,
Oh. The
but they're
never
just
th-
yeah,
they're in the never-ending cycle. They're in
yeah.
the perpetual existence of what holds the world together. Is that right?
Yeah, and maybe as well, some of these little figures, a lot of them are kind of watery, kind of like things like horses with fish tails, kind of think. And one of the theories is that the Picts might have believed in. Oh yeah, there's one. That's a little Pictish beast. That's at Rhynie. And one possibility is
I
that
actually took that photo. That's from my phone, by the way.
that's a good
That
verdict.
that was when that was when we were there together. Yeah, at
Yeah,
Rhynie. That was an incredible place. You said that this was like the marker to the entrance of a royal palace,
it was,
and
yeah.
I don't
And
know,
so, yeah,
what a
that's
spot.
another cool thing about like, oh, actually, these Pictish symbol stones, they weren't just in the middle of nowhere. This one marked, a palace, marked the entrance to a Pictish palace. So yeah, some of these things, I think it's possible that the Picts, like other Celts, might have believed in a watery afterlife. And someone got in touch with me recently, a folklorist who had suggested that the Kelpies of Gaelic folklore probably originated as a Pictish mythological figure or god. And I think it's quite possible because some of these particular types of little watery creatures are so common in this particular type of Pictish art that that's probably what it's representing. This is the Pictish belief of of life after death.
That to me, that's really profound because I've seen this in other cultures that are completely unrelated to the Picts. Like for example, I was just in the Lacandon jungles of the Maya, and they believe also that in the afterlife you return to the water, you return to the underworld, which is below the
Yeah.
water. I've seen it, I've seen it in cultures of the Pacific Islands when they talk about we come from the water and we return to the water, when we're done. It seems like when we get further and further back into human history, there's a lot of similarities across the globe, right? You see symbols that show up over and over again, or ideas around belief systems that are kind of, I don't know, they're very basic, right? These watery worlds. Do you get taken aback by that sometimes? Because I know that, for example, you pointed out in the Newton stone, there's this cross connection of a bunch of different symbols, but some of those symbols have been used again and repurposed in really weird ways, or have been found, like for example, that swastika like symbol that was found, that sort of exists in Buddhism as well as in,
Yeah.
this horrendous version of modern history, right? So what is it about the way that we see the world as humans and to describe the world through symbols and imagery and then manifest in our imagination what exists beyond our physical world? What is it that you've taken out of all of this work that you've done? Has it changed how you see the world? Is it telling you something about what humanity sees and exists as a whole? Like what are you decoded a new language that has been part of a whole culture. Uh, what are you left with in terms of an understanding of how that changes your perspective on humanity?
I think it just shows that we're actually all a lot more similar than you might have, initially thought. So with like the Pictish cross slabs, so a lot of these have images from their pre-Christian religion, but they're also incorporating it with the cross, and that's the dominant thing on the cross slabs. And so what that shows is they're trying to convey a sense of the afterlife. And what I find really humanizing about that is that they don't quite understand the new religion. So they're bringing in elements of the old to try and explain the new one. And I find it really moving, because they're learning about something, they're learning something new, and they're incorporating what they already know into it. And I think things like that it's just really fascinating. And it's also, if you think about
Yeah,
that
that's
kind of in a modern sense, it's kind of like you're taking things from tradition and you're learning new things. I mean, you might want to, what's a comparison? Say like if you're, learning new technology or something, say how maybe we got used to working with computers and now we do it on our phones. Some of those things have kind of transferred over. Like the past is important as you're moving forward. And I think that's what I find so beautiful about the ancient Celts and Pictish culture, because that's essentially what they're doing. They're preserving their past as they're moving forward into the future. And that's essentially what I do. That's my passion, is to preserve the past. And also to do that, using, modern technology in new ways. So, yeah, and they were essentially doing the same thing, 1,500 years ago. They're still preserving new culture.
In a way, though, by unlocking and uncovering a piece of the past that was missing for a long time, you're filling in a part of who we are now. No matter where we're from, where we think we're from, we're all part of this kind of united humanity, right? So by you unlocking this chapter, and you and your colleagues, of course, uh, it, it does change some part of our understanding of self. And maybe for you in particular, having, spent your whole life focused on this, do these aha moments, do they change how you feel internally about your own ancestry, or is it I mean, it can't just be purely academic, right? This is a hard job to land,
Yeah.
and a hard job to pursue. There's probably, I don't know, like 5 other Pictish experts in the world.
You say
So,
job. I don't get paid
it's a
for any of
passion
this.
thing.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is just a passion. I don't get paid for
It's
any
not a
of
job.
it.
Passion project.
Yeah, no. My bread and butter, my 9 to 5 is in commercial archaeology, and then I do a bit of lecturing on the side. So no, this is what little spare time I have, and my poor kids get dragged to on holiday to go see Pictish things. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't get paid
But they
for
love
any of
it.
it.
It sounds like they love it.
Yeah.
So do
Um.
you I guess the question is, I mean, when I think about the Pictish world and when I think about the Celts, there's a feeling of mysticism, that doesn't it feels like that's that's a version of our humanity that we know is deep down inside somewhere, where where the sort of legendary mythical creatures of the underworld and the ritualistic sort of pagan rites and the magic, the wizardry, the sort of the 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 symbology of the moon cycles, all these things, feel like they have some kind of element of the allure of the Celts. Now, when you actually reveal their language and get to see and hear in their own mindset what they were saying, what is all that? What is a thing that you've gained that you might be able to tell the world about that you've seen in the magic of the Celts through the obsession of their symbols and their words?
This is probably going to sound weird, but it makes me feel like a translator. If that makes sense. It makes me feel like I'm able to translate what they were trying to say. It feels like we lost that knowledge. I've endeavored to uncover it and then to tell other people about it. So whatever they were trying to say hasn't actually been lost. And yeah, that's my purpose. Essentially, that is that's how it makes me feel. It makes me feel like this is my I don't know, this is my passion in life. I always have this sort of burning drive to do more of it. And yeah, it makes me feel like I'm giving a voice to the voiceless, people who maybe lived 1,500 years ago or even more. It's to show that they haven't been lost to time, and the messages that they were trying to convey. And they are, bearing in mind, a lot of this is carved on stone. They wanted this to be, eternal. And we have lost this knowledge, but it's possible to uncover it. And that's my job.
It just took a pandemic. That's all. It just took a pandemic and a really great Zoom
Yeah, it
call
just
for
took
it
a
to all be
pandemic. Yeah,
to,
the
to all
pandemic,
be
a
uncovered.
Zoom call, and
Uh,
yeah, lots and lots of head scratching, and yeah, and that's what I do, and and I've got a few more of these things on the go. I'm working on another one at the moment, which I think might be another big exciting one. It's just
well, tease it. What like give us a cliffhanger. What's the cliffhanger notes on that
a
one as we wrap up?
cliffhanger. So
What's the
okay,
for
so
the
it's
next episode?
episode. Okay, so this one almost would have worked for the previous episode. So it's Roman in context, but it probably preserves one of the earliest Celtic inscriptions in Scotland. I won't say that a person from Scotland wrote it, but and it might contain another very interesting tribal name. Again, a lost tribe. But as with all of these things, there's like levels of complexity, because what happened in 1848 was a teenager thought that he would help us out by recarving the inscription. Yeah, so it's one of those. Oh, so essentially, I have had to try to untangle what is authentic versus what this teenager probably added, and so that's been a bit of a challenge, and yeah.
Man, those
But
rowdy teenagers from
I know.
1848,
Yep, 1848. What were
they were
you
known
thinking?
for
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
recarving a step
Well,
inside. Yeah.
okay, so uh, Kelly, I know it's late for you out in the UK, and I know that you've got a little one, probably really sick of waiting for you. And so thank you for taking the time. I
Yeah.
think
No,
this
no,
is the
no.
first, hopefully the first of several of our decoding mysteries podcast that we could do together with you. I really want to say thank you, because running around Scotland with you is one of my favorite memories of the last couple of years.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No,
Being on
me
top of
too.
Tappanoff, when you described that whole top of the mountain had been forged together in a fiery heat to create an ancient fortress that united its people, the stuff of legends. And I think, the fact that you've begun to uncode their language, it's like unlocking a part of humanity's mind. And thank
Yeah,
you for
it
doing
is.
that.
It really it feels like, and it feels like you're giving a human voice to these people as well. That's another thing that's really important. And you really get to sense, and you get to know more about the people who made these enigmatic things. And it's really important, not just for the history of Scotland, but for the history of the Celts and humanity in general.
All right. Well, say hi to all our friends out in the UK, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay. Oh, thanks very much, Albert. It's been brilliant as always. Thank you.